thinking right now as I say this to you that you're not ready or you don't have the experience. And that's okay, because Moses said the same things. When he said, "Who am I that they would listen to me?" God answered and said, "I will be with you." Just think about that. Moses was raised to be a leader. He was adopted by the Egyptian royal family. And he was a prince, and he had glory, he had power, and he had going for him that would soon make him a good leader. But he didn't lead the way people expected him to, because he ended up leaving and running away. And nobody expected him to ever return. So they were very surprised when he did show up, this time with an army of slaves standing behind him. But there he was. He was leading unexpectedly. Christ didn't lead the way people also expected him to lead as well. And in many ways, he was raised the same way that Moses was. If you think about it, he was God. He's the Prince of Peace, and he had glory, and he was all powerful. And he had every right to come to earth in godly form and rule and make a kingdom here on earth, but he didn't. Instead, he humbled himself and he came to earth to be a servant. He came to earth as the son of a carpenter. And even those who knew him most and knew him the most intimately thought that he was still going to overthrow Rome and build his kingdom here on earth. But he didn't. Instead, he humbled himself and led by example with a servant's heart. And by him doing this, he gave us the greatest example of what a leader needs to be. Unfortunately, despite his examples, Christ's example, unfortunately, despite his example, bad leadership traits still exist today. And you guys have all been led around your whole lives, right? And I'm very confident that you guys know the difference between a good leader and a bad leader, between your friends and your parents and your teachers and all that. So what are some traits that exhibit a bad leadership? Yeah.
They take everything for themselves and they don't let anyone else participate.
Selfishness? Yeah? That's a good one. Anybody else? Yeah. Say again, I'm sorry. Hypocrite, yeah.
Anger could make somebody a bad leader if they let it get to them.
Right. Anger. Anything else? Yeah, in the back. Abusive. Okay. Right. These are all terribly unhealthy traits to have, right? And most leaders that have these traits are leaders that mostly want to, they're in it for their own purposes, and they're trying to make their own gains. And they use all the successes that they're able to do, because even though these are bad leadership traits, they do work sometimes for certain people, right? And what they do is when they gather up all these successes and stuff, they use it to measure their own glory and not God's. Jesus, on the other hand, already has all the glory. He already has it all. And at the snap of his fingers like this, he can command all these things to come to him. But he doesn't do that. So, do you guys have your Bibles with you? If you do, if you don't, we have Bibles back here. Can you please pass them out? We're going to look into Mark 10. And while we're doing that, I'll go ahead and give you a little brief rundown of what's happening so far in Mark 9 as we move into Mark 10. Okay? So in Mark 9, basically what's happening is that the disciples are arguing amongst themselves about who's better than who, right? Have you guys ever done this before with your friends? Talked about, oh, I play better games than you do, or your hair's not as good as mine because I'm better at doing hair, or whatever it is.
Board games.
Or board games, there you go. I've done it. And that's okay. But anyway, Jesus stops the bickering and he tells them, you guys are focusing on the wrong things. You guys are all focusing on worldly greatness and not spiritual greatness. And that you should be focusing more on your spiritual instead of your worldly. And moving forward into verse 10, or in chapter 10, we learn that two disciples were actually not paying attention. James and John. They were not paying attention at all, and in fact, they go behind the disciples' backs in chapter 10, and they say there in chapter 10, hey, Jesus, you should totally put us on your, give us some seats of power in your kingdom. Put me on your left and put my brother on your right, and then all three of us, we can just rule together. And Jesus kind of looks at them, and he's like, what? I just talked to you guys about this. This is not what we're talking about. You guys still aren't getting it. You guys are still stuck on this earthly gain. In Mark 10, verse 45, if you take a look at that, it says, whoever would be great among you must serve and minister, and whoever wants to be great among you must be slave to all. Because even the Son of Man came not to be served, but to be a servant to offer his life as a ransom for others. In saying this, Jesus describes the strongest form of leadership. And this leadership is called servant leadership. Now, to understand servant leadership, we have to kind of break it down a little bit. So we have leadership on this side, and then we have servant leader on this side. Now, the leader, he is more he's more concerned with the general organization and where it's going, okay? And then you have the servant leader who's more concerned with the health and welfare of the people that are following him. Yes? There can be both. There can be both. Sometimes we need both. Okay? But servant leadership is the one that is more powerful because you're working with, you're building a community that way. So, as we're talking about servant leadership, I'm reminded of December nights. You guys remember December nights? No? Okay, well, at December nights, we had a whole bunch of people here from this church and other churches all around the area, and also some people that weren't even church, and they came out here. And I remember I was out there and I was helping pick up some trash, and I came across a table with a bunch of youths that were sitting around it, and I just said, hey, do you guys mind throwing away the trash before you leave? And the number one response that I got on most of the nights that I did this was, that's not my trash. And I said, okay, well, I'll pick it up then, no problem. But if you take a look, and if you ever walk outside, you can see Pastor Glenn out there all the time picking up trash. And he doesn't do this because he has to. He doesn't do this because he needs to or wants to. He sees a need and he does it. He has no problem rolling up his sleeves to get a job done because he sees that it needs to be done. And the reason this is because he serves with a servant's heart. In John 13, 1-17, you guys can go ahead and turn there if you want to. In John, Jesus gives a very practical example of what it means to serve others. While you're turning there, here's the context of what's going on. Jesus is sitting down with his disciples for a Passover meal. And while he's sitting there, mind you, this is he already knows that he's going to die. He already knows that he's going to be betrayed. He already knows that his life is done on earth and he's going back to heaven soon. He already knows all this. And he spends his last hours with his disciples at this feast. And this is when Christ does something that shakes the disciples up just a little bit, because he shows them exactly how we should all act. And this simple act that he does is he walks over and he grabs a bowl of water and a towel, and he washes his disciples' feet. This simple act of washing the disciples during his last few hours on earth reveals not only the true character, but the character he wants all believers to develop. He's putting the concern of his followers and his brothers ahead of his own gains, his own personal desires, his own pride. It is this portrait of servant leadership that we should all try to duplicate, replicate. Many years ago, I was in the Army, and I did 10 years in there in service, and I had 4 different deployments in Asia and the Middle East. And in my time in the military, I've learned a lot. I learned a lot of different things about leadership, about friendship, about family. But one of the things that we did the most in the Army was training. And we would do drills until basically you'd want to throw up. Over and over again, we would do it. One of these such drills is called a rollover drill. This rollover drill basically is a drill that would train the people, or train the men, what to do in case a vehicle rolled over. Now imagine with me, if you will, you're driving in your mom's minivan or on your way to a sports game practice or something, and all of a sudden what you see is right side up is now upside down. And you're hanging from your seatbelt and you don't really know what's going on. So what kind of panic, what kind of disorientation would you be feeling at this moment? Yeah, you'd be freaking out. So with that in mind, this training is done in a facility where they take basically the wheels off of a Humvee and they attach it to a swing, and we all get into it. And if you guys have never seen a up-armored Humvee before, it's very cramped on the inside. We have a lot of monitors and a lot of different equipments in there, along with ammo boxes and all kinds of stuff like that. And we would have to get in there with our full battle rattle, all of our gear, all of our armor. And so if you can think of that already being cramped, you're a big guy like me, and you're out to here probably with gear, and now you have your weapon in front of you. Cramped is a different word. There needs to be a better one than that. And you're just stuck, and this is your home. You can't really move too much. And then you're strapped in, and then the thing starts to sway a little bit. Then they let go of the swing brake completely, and you flip upside down, and all your stuff goes to the ceiling. Now you have to try and navigate your way through a sea of elbows and legs and other debris that are in the way. And a lot of times, it's really hard to see where one person ends and the other one begins because you're just kind of fumbled into it. And what happens is we do this over and over and over again, and eventually we start actually thinking about other people. You know, something that starts so little as just a little bit of a training, you start thinking about another person to the point where you almost become a servant to that person because you don't want them to get hurt. You don't want to get hurt, and you don't want them to get hurt, and you're trying to get out and help everybody get out at the same time because you want everybody to be out of the truck to pull security and help you and help other people to make sure everyone is okay, because you can't win a war by yourself. So you're sitting there thinking about all these different things, and all happens at once, and somehow out of the midst you become a servant leader because you're helping everyone. Now, backing up to our story in the Bible, Jesus was fully aware of his position as a leader. Before the disciples even experienced him as a servant leader, as a servant, they already experienced him as a leader. They looked at him, they thought he was a master, he was their master, he was their Lord, and he looked at them as an extremely powerful leader. And Jesus voluntarily becomes the servant to his followers. He did not come all the way from heaven, experience human life, and get ready to prepare himself for this excruciating death just to become a foot washer of his disciples. But that was something he was willing to do because they needed it. Jesus wants to set an example for his disciples to follow. And he wants us to see that being a servant leader means that you are, first, a voluntary servant. That you are a leader who uses power to serve others. And that you are a servant who out of love serves others' needs before their own. And a teacher who teaches their followers how to become a servant leader themselves. Christians are called to be servants in every aspect of our lives. From the Bible, it is clear that this means that serving fellow man in accordance with the higher purpose of serving God, but this doesn't mean that that's simply all you do is serve. This doesn't mean that serving is enough. To actually be a Christian servant leader, you have to be serving God by serving other people. So is there anything that you can do today that would help you serve, help you be a better Christian? Many of you might be looking at, actually many of you are actually looking at me like I have lobsters crawling out of my ears. But that's okay. That's all right. And some of you guys might be thinking that you can't do it or you're not good enough, but remember what I said in the beginning. God will be with you. You're not alone. The question is, what are you going to do? I want you guys to check out this video really quick. It's about a girl named Evelyn Pinal, and she does some amazing things. She felt God calling on her heart from an age of 6 years old. She's 12 in the video, and it's amazing what she has done with her time and how she was able to serve so many at such a young age.
And welcome back to the show. For 20 years, gift-filled shoeboxes have brought joy and hope to millions of children around the world at Christmas time. Now, one shoebox from Wisconsin traveled to the Dominican Republic to mark a milestone.
Hi, my name is Evelyn, and I'm 12 years old.
This is the story of a young girl from a small town in Wisconsin with a big dream.
I've wanted to help the poor for a really long time. I was praying for it since I was 6 years old that I would be able to help the poor.
Evelyn Pinot's prayer was answered when she heard about Operation Christmas Child, an outreach headed by Franklin Graham, eldest son of evangelist Billy Graham. The idea: fill shoeboxes with gifts and deliver them to needy children around the world.
You wouldn't think that a simple gift like this could have that kind of impact. But for kids that are in orphanages, kids that are in poverty, kids that are living in dumps, kids that are in areas of conflict, war, to give them a gift to let them know that there's somebody that knows who they are and cares about them and loves them.
Evelyn was that somebody. She started the Shoebox Club at age 8. It began small, but grew quickly. Around 80 kids meet each month now to pack shoeboxes.
We've been running for 4 years. In those 4 years, we have packed 2,500 shoeboxes. I want to help kids because I want them to be able to feel loved and know about Jesus, like I do. Kids helping kids around the world, that's my motto.
You see, her shoeboxes represent millions of lives touched by a simple act of kindness. 10 million shoeboxes will be hand-delivered this year by land, air, sea, trucks, boats, trains, and even elephants. In December, the project reached a milestone, delivering shoeboxes to more than 100 million children since starting in 1993.
What a great reason to celebrate today.
Inspired by her passion for helping the poor, 12-year-old Evelyn Pinot was picked by Operation Christmas Child to hand-deliver the symbolic 100 millionth shoebox to a young child in the Dominican Republic.
Here, guys, do you need help over here?
She turned to her friends at the Shoebox Club for help in putting the 100th millionth box together. They decorated it with a white paper covered with handprints from all the children serving in the group.
Thanks, everyone. I couldn't do it without you guys.
Then for several weeks,
I love you. I'm proud of you.
Love you, Daddy.
You're so awesome, sweetie.
Thanks, Dad.
She crisscrossed the country, taking the special shoebox on tour.
This is actually Operation Christmas Child's 100 million shoebox, and we're going to need all of your guys' help to pack shoeboxes.
At each stop, people put different mementos in the box. Then on a recent Wednesday morning,
the last time we were sitting in a car traveling through a city, we were in New York, dreaming about this moment, and now we're finally here. Are you so overwhelmed?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Practicing my Spanish.
thousands of miles from her home in Fort Atkinson, Wisconsin,
Wow. Finally here.
Evelyn's prayer of helping needy children was answered.
Well, it's a simple box with simple toys. In this particular box is a stuffed animal, some tissues, hygiene material, a book. But you know, for Samaritan's Purse and Operation Christmas Child, a simple box with a powerful message. Each box delivered to these kids in the name of Jesus Christ.
At each distribution, the gospel is shared, and children are given the opportunity to learn more about Christ through a 12-week discipleship program.
God can do anything. And if you believe that God can do anything with you, then anything can happen. I am finally here in the Dominican Republic. I finally get to be able to go and deliver this box to a little girl.
In a small village in the Dominican Republic, Evelyn met 5-year-old Brenda Valdez
What's this?
and handed her the special shoebox filled with toys, school supplies, and a pink children's Bible.
Nunca ha sido un regalo como esto. It's in the bottom.
The two girls spent time going through the presents. One special item was a heart-shaped necklace with the words, "Best Friends Forever." Brenda broke it in two, giving one half of the necklace to Evelyn as a reminder of their special bond.
Tengo una amiga más. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen.
George Thomas, CBN News, in the Dominican Republic.
All right. Hey, you guys, we're gonna go into a time of communion, following up that. But as you go, I want you to consider, how is God calling you to serve? So before you jump, oh, that's the band coming up, so don't worry. But before you guys jump into communion, I want you to be asking God, where is he calling you to serve? Maybe it's something like that. Like, I know Lainey has done Operation Christmas Child Packs with you guys, with her group before. So if you're in that group, you would have done that. But we've got a few things for you to try here in Tucson. When you come up for communion, there's a red card next to the communion thing. And I want to challenge you guys to pray about it, because if you grab one, the expectation is that you're going to do it. And it's got different ways to serve the people around you. And it might be something that's a little big for you. It might be something you can pull off on your own, but it might be something where you have to go, "Mom, Dad, I need some help. I need you to help me pull this off." And that would involve a bit of, talking to them. But I want you guys to pray about it. I want you guys to think, is this what God has for me? And if so, then grab it. Once you grab it and open it, you're committing to do it. So whatever it is, you got to pull it off. It won't be anything too crazy, but I think you can manage it. And, we'd love to hear what it is. We'd love to hear how it goes once you do it. I want to challenge you not to wait on it. Don't give it months before you get around to it. Do it. Start it this week. Start figuring out how you're going to do it, who you're going to serve or bless with that thing. But as we step into communion and remember what God did to serve us, he didn't have to be here. He didn't have to come down. He was just fine on the throne of heaven. But he chose to give all that up so that he could stand here in our place and pay for our sin and be the sacrifice to bring our redemption. And that's what we're going to celebrate in communion. That's what we're going to embody in the way that we live a sacrificial life on behalf of others through the Red Card Challenge. And in the midst of all of that, if you need prayer, we're going to have prayer partners up here at the service, Amelia and Paul and Chris. If you see anybody else that's kind of waiting around, if you can jump in as well. If you guys need prayer, there will be leaders up front here, and they can pray with you. And we would love to invite you into that and join us in worship. Thanks.